Look what I'm doing today. More sanding. So, this airplane is made out of plywood. Top half that I've handcrafted out of foam, masked it off, fiberglassed it. When you're done with that, if the foam's still there, you can melt it out with acetone or use a heat gun and melt it out that way. So now this is basically like butter. But one of the problems we have is that plywood has a tendency to suck up your paint. And you will spend a million years spraying it, it'll suck it up. Spraying it, sucking it up. Especially on edges like this. So the first thing you got to do is seal your paint. So you can do, let's see if I got some here. This kind of stuff, polyacrylic, and shoot it on there. And what it'll do is it'll put a protective coat on it long enough that eventually you'll probably sand through part of that, but for the most part, it keeps the paint from sucking up. Now the problem is that this can of polyacrylic doesn't go very far. There are roll-on versions, paint-on versions, all that kind of stuff. The problem is that that can is about 13 bucks. So I've found it easier in a lot of cases is to buy glazing putty made by Bondo. And that is what you see in these brown colors. Glazing putty is used in bodywork to kind of, it's basically a thinned out, real fine grit putty, kind of like Bondo, but it spreads smoother. And so it's easier to fill tiny imperfections. So what I do is before I even paint, I take it, put it on my thumb, and I'll go over every single edge of this, and then I'll do a fine sand with like maybe 220 or less, and then I'll do some paint. So what we're doing today is we're turning plywood into flawless, super smooth finishes, which is pretty hard to do because it has wood grain. So you do a combination. What I like to do is I will use everything Rust-Oleum, and don't just use regular primer, use the self-etching primer. And what self-etching primer is designed to do is it kind of, I don't know what you would want to call it, chemically etches grooves or whatever into something, and it's typically designed for if you're painting metal. If you just spray primer on metal, there's a chance it's going to chip off even if you prepped it. Etching primer, what it does is it actually alters the outer layer of what you're spray painting so that the paint has something to attach to. And so what I've done is I start using etching primer even on wood, because I'm finding out that stuff is mean and it'll latch on and it doesn't pop off, it won't chip off or anything. So use etching primer, it'll save you a lot of hassles. It's not a filler primer, so it's not intended to fill holes and gaps, but that's what glazing putty's for. And at Walmart for $3, I can do this whole plane for $3. So anyway, we're sanding. You notice this arch is like this. I'm not gonna use the small side to go this way. I'm gonna use the wide side because I'm trying to make sure that I got a minimal amount of pass here so that I get the most amount of imagine, try to explain this. You got this side small, this side big. If you got an arch like this, the big side won't reach as much. See what I'm saying? So you turn it this way, you get more coverage. And that's because the bulk running laterally will get more sanding. And it's not to say you can't switch it up. Now here, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for feathering. Your hands You know, you can kind of tell if you need more work, like this edge needs work up here. But for the most part, what I'm looking for is that this edge looks like it's almost like little feathers. And typically I'll go one direction if I'm on a flat surface, and then I'll switch it another direction. And when I'm done, I shouldn't see a lot of brown. The excess is to just give me something to work through. So that's all we're going to talk about today, is the basics there.